wanna do now is making it last. Mothers and fathers, sisters and brothers, friends forever, strengthening the ties that keep us together. Mothers and fathers, sisters and brothers, friends forever, strengthening the ties that keep us together.
It's time for another conversation. Making It Last podcast, where it's all about helping us to have better relationships, not just with ourselves, but with other people. My name is Noreen Daly, and with me this time around is a lady I have the utmost respect for, Mrs. Evelyn Kennedy McKenzie, and she's the director for Ken Healthcare. Welcome.
Thank you.
Now, we're going to be talking about how we can have better relationships with the elderly, and this one hits very close to home, given the fact that my mom fits in that category. And I've noticed, especially in recent months, that the needs, we really don't pay as much attention sometimes to the elderly as we should. And I think sometimes that is out of ignorance. So I am hoping that this podcast will in some way help to point people in that direction in terms of maybe just some simple things that we can do to have better relationships. So you might not necessarily have direct contact with maybe a mother or a father right now, but at some point you will, and even in the wider society. So as somebody who, that is one of the things you do on a regular basis because of your profession, tell us just some things that we can do to have better relationships with the elderly.
I think the first thing we ought to say is that where they are is where we are going, if we're very fortunate. I say if we're very fortunate, if we don't get knocked over by the proverbial bus,
Yes.
we will get old. And it's interesting that I'm a midwife by training.
Yes.
And you never ask a mother with a new baby, how young is your baby? You always ask, how old is your baby? Which indicates that the baby is getting older as time goes by. And when I was a small girl of probably 6, 7, and somebody was 25, I knew they were ancient. When I was 25 and somebody was 50, well, they were close to the grave. And the thought of somebody being 70, 75 and onwards, they were really old. The truth of the matter is aging is normal.
Okay.
It's not a disease.
Okay.
It's not a dis-ease either.
Okay. Just before you continue, let me just ask it. What's the age group we're thinking of?
We are thinking of anybody who the state classifies as retired.
Okay, so this is 60,
60,
depending on where you are.
Depending on where you are.
Okay.
But also we have to think of need as opposed to age.
Okay.
Because I have looked after people who are in their 50s who are suffering from dementia, which is a disease of age, and other psychiatric, psychological issues that are more connected to the aged than to somebody who is in midlife, for instance. So we have not only got to think of age, but we have to think of age and need.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
You asked what are some of the things that I could point to. I think in our culture context,
Yes, ma'am.
we are not connected to each other as we ought to be in terms of physical connection.
Okay.
The society has lost something. I think it's with migration. So we are all culpable. The transmission of culture where families lived in community. Mommy, grandma was in the house with the children.
That extended family.
And the extended family setting where grandma and grandpa gave their history and stories for the benefit of the younger children. So they developed a deeper bond, emotional bond, and physical bond, sleeping on grandma's lap, sleeping on grandpa's lap, having the touch. Then those bonds have been, to a great extent, broken. In Jamaica, currently, you have a lot of fostering. Initially, it was by the maternal grandmother. Now it's by whoever is available fostering. And that breaks the bond of physical contact. But seniors need, if we think about it logically, we'll understand why.
Okay.
When you're a baby, everybody wants to touch you.
Yes.
When you're a small child, you choose because you want to sit on somebody's lap, somebody you feel attached to, you want to touch their hair, stroke their face. When you're a young adult or a teenager, you choose who you want to touch you. When you are in a significant relationship, you would die if the person didn't touch you. When you happen to be a senior, they suffer from something we call skin hunger, because the people who are around them tend to feed them, bathe them, maybe feed them, take them out in the wheelchair. But the touching doesn't happen. And I'll explain it this way. I had a gentleman who was dying. He was in bed. And I usually stroke their faces. And I went over and I stroked his face. And he was so receptive. I said, let me give you a kiss. So I bent over and I kissed him.
Wow.
This is his response. I needed that, you see? And it gave me goosebumps.
Wow.
Because it reminded me that touch therapy, we are human beings. We were born into that sort of environment with relationships and connections and physical contact. It's normal, it's innate. And if you don't get it, you'll miss it.
It's interesting you should say that, because we have this tradition, so to speak, after Vespers on a Friday evening, and whoever is with me, they could be complete strangers to my mom, and once worship is over, we hug each other. And I've noticed that my mother I'm telling you, I will take complete strangers in the house, but she's always making sure that everybody, she ends up hugging them. So you saying that just now reinforces that, that need, as you call it, that need for touch.
It's a need.
So she's making sure that she gets enough.
Touch, yes.
Yes.
I need 5 a day to keep healthy. So I know,
Wow.
I know that seniors, and I've seen it. Sometimes they come in and they're angry and they're upset and they are restless and they are, probably violent, probably out of control. But then you start to touch them and gently stroke them.
Wow.
And you satisfy that skin hunger need. And in a short while, you don't need as much drugs to control behavior, because they know from the way you look and from the way you feel and from the way you touch them that you mean it. They might be in dementia, maybe stage 4 or 5 dementia, and they are seriously nonverbal. But touch will make them feel valued, valuable, human, and still within the circle. It's critical
For them to feel that
for them to feel that way. I could name umpteen things. We have a lady right now who is as demented as they come, probably stage 4. But yesterday in her art class, we gave her a picture to paint. And she painted, she selected her colors with care, and she selected within the margins of the patterns of the flowers.
Wow.
And I'm going to frame that picture and put it by her bed. It was exquisite. And when she was challenged about being offered help, she told off the nurse who was interfering. She said, the woman gave me this to do, and I have to listen to her. We nearly died of shock because it's not her way of communicating.
Wow.
But now the fact that somebody has taken the interest to show her something and to deliver an expectation of her to perform, it gives her value. So the ratty behavior and the wandering around the room was cut for hours because she had something to do. Another area of need that seniors suffer is food, feeding. Food is their last great pleasure for any human being. Food is the last great pleasure. And when they stop eating, they're dying, okay? Or are gravely ill and cannot eat. So we also know, though, that as you age, several things happen with your digestive processes.
Okay.
You're unable to absorb as many nutrients from your food because the process is considerably slower. So you don't absorb as many. Your gut is rather sluggish, and all those sorts of things happen to you. So you have to feed food that is nice to taste, attractive to look at, and maybe in the consistency that they can appreciate and enjoy, and in the volume. So it's small meals, it's frequently, and it's in the consistent that they. And I have people who are diabetics, and I'll slip them a sweet every now and again, and for them that's a golden treat. They light up like children.
Yes.
So
yes.
and it's not going to kill them. I know. I wouldn't be crazy if somebody's blood sugar is 25 to give them a sweet. But I know that whether they're diabetics or not, it's something that people like. And because it's something they like, something else that seniors value is rhythm and rhyme and ritual. So I'll walk into a space and I'll dance. And it gives them the tickles and the giggles and they laugh. Or I'll take them and dance with them. Because we have to think about it. What does it do for the brain?
Yes.
And it raises the endorphins, and the serotonin level raises. And so they are much better in their mood. So you elevate the mood by doing, activity based, even if they are wheelchair bound or in the bed. Leg raises and hand clapping and all of that sort of thing, and some music in the background with rhythm. You can improve their immune system by that methodology. So they are not open to as many infections. Or if they have caught it, then they are better able to combat it. Because remember, we are total beings, yes? The mind, body, and spirit.
I think what happens, well, more often than not, to a lot, and I'll say a lot of us, because I'm probably guilty of it sometimes, is that we make the assumption that some of the things that you're recommending is that they won't appreciate it because they're old, not remembering that there's still people who still have needs.
And they're alive. They're not dead yet. You're not dead until you're dead.
Yes.
It's as simple as that. I mean, as you say rightly, we often, and it's to do with not knowing.
Right.
It's to do with not knowing that these individuals are human beings. They once had jobs. They once had children. They once had bank accounts. They once had, cars and drove on roads and went on trips and did all things.
These things.
Right. And so those memories are evocative of their story. Yeah. And makes them come to life.
Yeah.
Using pictures, photograph albums. It might not be their photograph album, but it's a photograph album that speaks to their era, maybe. So the styles in dress and hats and camaraderie with the husband hanging on or children, it brings out a conversation, even if not verbal, with their eyes.
Yes.
They light up.
Yes. That is so true.
There are so many things. A senior who is in bed, maybe, or in a wheelchair, they love flowers. They love color. They love texture. So you take them out. You do the describing of the environment, and you say, "Look," but you have to have a sense of value and a sense of beauty. Yourself. You can't give what you don't have. So I've just started last March. I got a chicken coop and I have chickens and so I had them tiny chicks and so I took pictures and showed them the growing on chicks, and then they had eggs and I brought the eggs in so they can see that and if they don't have those experiences, then you're just not
Yeah, you've said a lot. You've spoken the whole idea of touch, whole idea of food, because a lot of times some people just really don't pay as much attention to the food that we give to our elderly. They just basically just plop anything on the plate. So you spoke about that and the whole idea of ritual. But is there anything else you'd like to add as we're wrapping up this podcast?
Yes, ritual. I think the spiritual side of people. In our culture, Jamaica is, in quotes, Christian society. We have a church on every square inch of land. But in terms of, the spiritual side of people who are seniors being met, if they're not able to go to the congregation, my experience is that the congregation seldom comes to them. And when I talked about ritual, I was thinking about things like communion services, youth meetings, reciting texts and singing choruses. I buy the maracas and I buy the tambourines and I buy the drum and I make certain that they're a part of it.
Nice.
And and I now have a chaplain who comes in and ministers to them if they can't get out. Ministers to them while they're in the facility. So the spiritual side is very important, even for those who say that they are not Christians.
Okay.
In our facility recently, we had one person of 94 who was baptized. He was never a Christian. He never went to church. But because we have a ritual of a worship time for the seniors is 6:15 every evening. And so he absorbed, if you like, the atmosphere of worship. And now has his own song.
Nice.
And can now pray.
Nice.
Which he never used to be able to do. His children were in shock. They live abroad. They were in shock when they found out that he asked. We never
baptized.
Yeah, we never did ask him. Maybe it's we were slow. But he got it.
Yes.
So there we go.
I think that's an excellent note to end on. Thank you so much, Mrs. McKenzie.
You're very welcome, Miss Daly.
This has been a conversation about how we can have better relationships with the elderly. And the very last thing that was said just now is that we need to try to ensure that we're catering to their spiritual needs. This has been Making It Last podcast. I'm Noreen Daly. Until next
loving
time.
me, I loving you. Mothers and fathers, husbands and wives, sisters and brothers, friends for life, won't live in the past. All I wanna do now is making it last.